thank you all for coming again. I hope you enjoy our lunch, and thanks to the folks here at the Phoenix Park. We've done a lot of events here. In fact, Pete, the first MPI event we ever did 3 years ago was here in this room, and so thanks everybody for coming. My job is to introduce Joe Trippi. And the reason I'm going to stand is that I'm going to jump off really quickly and then come back when Joe is done. But Joe has been, many of you know, I'll just say two things about Joe. One is that he is, I believe, truthfully, the intellectual and political godfather of modern 21st century politics. I think there's been no person more responsible for helping imagine how politics could evolve, how we could reinvent the old 20th century model that Pete talked about, and to build a new model of the 21st century than Joe Trippi. And frankly, the Dean campaign in 2003, which was so magical and so remarkable in so many ways, it was a campaign that required an extraordinary amount of imagination. I mean, it was essentially, they were making it up as they went along, and I used to talk to Joe during the course of that campaign, and I, like many people, sat riveted for the first time. I mean, the thing that convinced me personally that the Dean campaign was really something truly special and was tapping into something that we had never seen before was, you know, I'd go to sleep at 11 o'clock at night, and before I go to bed, every night I would go to the Dean blog and listen to average Americans pouring their hearts out about politics and their love of their country and their desire to see a better day for the country they love and their hatred of George Bush and disappointment, perhaps, their disappointment in George Bush. And I, as a guy who grew up as a field organizer and a TV producer and everything else, I had never seen anything like this. There was so much intimacy and passion and intensity. This is the kind of thing you fantasize about, right, as a political organizer, and we were seeing it displayed every night in real time, in the drama of watching Americans sort of discover the power and the importance and the passion of politics, right? It was transformative to me. And so I really became a believer that what Howard Dean and Joe Trippi were doing was literally transforming politics in front of our eyes, using this extraordinary imagination they had to really imagine a completely a different kind of politics, and frankly, a much better politics. Because the politics we see today, as Pete talked about, is much more democratic. It's many more people involved. This is a better politics than the politics we had in the 20th century. And the second thing I want to say about Joe is that in my own life, as somebody who's been involved in this for 20 years, there is no one who has taught me more, been a better mentor to me, been a better friend to me than Joe Trippi. And so I will walk on hot coals and go to the end of the earth for this guy as long as he is here. And I have to. And it's a great honor for me to introduce. Welcome, Joe Trippi. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to jump off and come back.
Are you gonna?
Okay, thank you.
Are you on? Thanks. No, I'm going to. The format for this is just we're going to basically spend a lot of time here just talking with Joe. But what we thought we'd do after Simon introducing him as he roundly does.
I have to leave now.
He has to leave now. No.
After that.
Is I'm just going to actually ask a few questions. We're going to have just a little bit more of a conversation to start this out, and then we're going to basically turn it over to all of you so we can basically have a richer conversation. But one of the things I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss, I mean, the beauty of Joe is that he had been deeply involved in the old politics for many years in different campaigns and different cycles. And then he's also, like you say, was in this incredibly innovative 2004 cycle, and he also has been intimately involved in the Edwards campaign in this cycle. And so we can kind of have a historical perspective here a little bit. And one of the things I just wanted to ask is, because as someone who was outside politics but could see the internet and could see that happening in the 90s, late 90s, 2000, and all these other things, were any inklings of this happening before 2004? If you take yourself back, were people starting to theorize on this, or think about it, or tried it, or not tried this? And just give us a little bit of like circa late 90s or 2000 and when people were thinking.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, I talk about this a lot, but the moment where I knew this was going to happen, I tell people, I was on a stock trading board, an AOL Motley Fool stock trading board for a company called THQ. It makes games for Xboxes and PlayStations and Game Boys. And there was a guy named David Haynes on that board, on the trading board, who talked a lot about the company. And you always wanted to read him every day. And he went missing for 5 or 6 days, and the whole board was up in arms. I didn't realize, he was my favorite guy too, but I didn't realize the whole board thought about him that way. Anyway, what happened was he came on after 5 or 6 days after great anxiety on the board and said, hey guys, I'm really sorry, but my wife just gave birth to our first child, a son named Christian. And we all celebrated and gave him good wishes. And then for 18 months, he talked about how the stock sucked and the company was making games that weren't any good, and the balance sheet was horrible. And meanwhile, you also learned that he was an amateur triathlete who never won a race he ever entered. He had a dog named Bruin, a cat named Sophie. 18 months later, we learned about his birth of his baby daughter. 3 months after that, somebody came on the board and said, guys, I've got really sad news. David Haynes died of a massive heart attack today at age 31. Now, you guys all just learned about this guy in 3 or 4 minutes, and you all had a big woo at the end of that. This guy was 31 years old. We lived with him for 18 months. I think we knew more about him than his next-door neighbors knew about him. And somebody came on that board, it was about 1995, somebody came on that board and said he couldn't have left much for his kids. Christian's only 18 months old, his daughter's only 3 months old. I've started an education trust fund for the kids. There's a button I've created here on the site. If you close your eyes and pray and click it and put your credit card in 1995, you had to pray when you did this. Put your credit card in there and give $100 or $50, whatever you could afford, to help his kids. So I clicked and gave $100. Something like $400,000 got raised in about a week from the thousands of people around America who had a sense of community online on this stock trading board. The company didn't know the board existed. AOL was one of tens of thousands of chat boards. I mean, they didn't care either. I mean, they cared about our clicks, but they didn't know any of those. But we all knew each other and formed this community. It was at that moment I said, if I ever get a chance, well, if something, this type of community could get built around something as stupid as a stock trading board for a game company that makes Xbox games, what the hell would happen if you ever try to build that kind of sense of community and energy and do it for something really important, like a candidate for president of the United States or trying to make the country a better place. And so starting back in 1995, that's when well, I guess 8 years later, Howard Dean was finally crazy enough to call me, and that was about it.
Was there any attempts before that, though, to actually bring it up and it got rejected, or people said, that's crazy,
that happened all my whole career. No, I'm serious.
But there were no false starts tried, earlier.
Yeah, 1981, in the Tom Bradley campaign for governor, I tried to talk them into computerizing the campaign. They wouldn't do it. I went out and bought a 11 PD DEC computer and put it in the and installed it in the campaign myself. And the entire campaign thought it was crazy. But we had a database back then of fun, and we literally did our fundraising and targeting using that computer. But like I said, every step of the way, people thought, no, this is crazy. This will never happen. And the Dean campaign wasn't like. I remember fighting like crazy for 2 weeks to get the meetup.com link on our site.
We'll talk about that. So how did you introduce it to the Dean campaign, and what were those early issues? Because one of the things we try to do at the New Politics Institute is how do people in established organizations actually adopt new tools, and what's the resistance? So it'd be interesting to hear what those early struggle was.
There was all kinds of things. I mean, like if you link to meetup.com, is there an in-kind contribution? In other words, once meetup.com starts, thousands of Dean people start using it to meet, and is it the legal department and the campaign wouldn't let us do it. They thought it was an in-kind contribution. That's when I came up with the bright idea of approaching Meetup and paying them $2,500 for their service, because then it wasn't them in kind, it was us buying it, and we'd set the price at $2,500, and the FEC. The lawyers couldn't figure out how to screw me on that one and stop it. So I mean, no, that's serious. That's how it was. I mean, it was really like just trying to figure out ways. First of all, there's no FEC. No, there are no rules about this stuff. I mean, all the rules about contributions. I mean, the FEC gives you 2 weeks to file the form, the quarterly report. I mean, ends on March 31st. You got 2 weeks to put it to file the report. They never envisioned 300,000 contributions coming in. And by the way, at the time, I think it's still, you had to file paper back in not 2004. I don't know if that's changed, but I don't know if you people remember, our report was, we used to have like, we'd put it up on the web, a picture of it, and it'd be like 15 feet tall, and we'd have the 2 of the smallest women we could find trying to act, sort of showing that they were trying to deliver it to the FEC. So it looked bigger, it looked bigger than it was big, but it looked even bigger the way we did it. But I'm just saying there were a lot of things that were totally different. You couldn't get anybody in the and then there were also people who just thought there still are. I mean, the Clinton campaign still thought until February that the internet was crazy. Even though they hired Peter Dowd, I think there's a lot of geniuses that they hired internet people who know what they're doing, and Peter's incredible. But I'll say it like, all the bottom-up genius in the world can't do anything if the top of the campaign wants to run a top-down campaign. Mm-hmm. And the Clinton campaign ran a top-down campaign until February, and that's what cost her the whole thing. That's why she's going to go down.
Well, you're
sorry. Somehow I went from 95.
No. Okay, so we're fast forwarding. So you basically found out.
I like Clinton, by the way, just in case. I don't want it.
So I guess just to sum up the 2003 thing before we move right to the 2004 thing. So the candidate himself, internally, the lawyers, campaign people, you had this basic struggle all the way, but still the thing worked and it all came together. And was it both? How did you make it happen in that way?
I mean, first of all, Howard, admits. I mean, he barely used email, and he couldn't blog to save his life. I mean, and he knows that too. I mean, the greatest, I think, it was Larry Lessig had a mate. He's a Stanford professor, and he's got a very, very well-known blog. And we decided to let Howard guest blog in 2003 for a week when Larry went on vacation. So Howard, and you can't. This is a bunch of really sophisticated people on that site. And Howard just came on. He was the usual candidate. It's terrific. You're all terrific for blogging here with me. And they'd ask him a question. That's a terrific question. I mean, they were like all 4-word answers, and everything was terrific. And after the first, after about 5 of those, somebody finally commented saying, I knew this was going to be bad, but I thought the staff would ghostwrite the answers for him. But this is like some kind of robo-answer thing. And so I jumped on, because I was on my computer watching this, I jumped on my computer and said, guys, if we were ghostwriting this stuff, don't you think we'd be doing a better job of it? David Weinberger, who is a well-known, one of the guys who actually really did sort of invent the internet and stuff, immediately posted on his blog that the most authentic moment in presidential politics on the net just occurred on Larry Lessig's blog, because you knew for sure that really was Howard Dean struggling with learning how to blog. And that really was his campaign manager freaking out. That it was one of the most authentic moments. No, and it was true. We had created, you knew, if you watched that on the blog, you absolutely knew that was really him. It didn't matter what he said. You knew it was really him and he was really trying to do it. Opposed to today where you know everything you get from Hillary Clinton and frankly from Barack Obama. I mean, most of the stuff that's written and signed with their names is bull. You knew when Howard did it because it was so
authentic.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's jump to this cycle.
So pathetic, what I mean.
So you were inside the Edwards campaign, and you've obviously watched very closely on the other 2 candidates. You already jumped into the Hillary comment, and you also had told us earlier that you see her campaign as the last of an old-style candidacy. Could you elaborate a little bit on more what you see of hers, what you see of Obama's, and what you saw of Edwards in terms of their use of this new model, the new tools, in relation to the old model and the old tools?
Well, I mean, I think, look, the Clinton campaign did exactly what a top-down command and control campaign would do, thinking it was using the internet. Like if even you look at The Sopranos, one of like the better known moments, the Sopranos video that they did, written and scripted, no real authentic moment in it, and exactly how, and you know, starring the candidate and the family and stuff, and it just was. I mean, what was cool about it? What was cool about it was that the Clintons had done an online video. That's what was cool about it. That's why it got news. Whereas you look at will.i.am, outside the campaign, no control by the campaign, mashing up the candidate's words with music, images. 13 million people are watching it. So you've got sort of the two extremes of the campaign trying to control what the message of the video and stuff is, and a campaign that actually, like the Dean campaign, encouraged, let people know that it wanted their creativity. That it wasn't just the people inside the building, the 60 people in headquarters that were the smartest people in the world. The Dean, the 650,000 people out there were a lot smarter than us in the headquarters. And in the Obama campaign, the 3 million people or whatever it is that are out there are much smarter than the people in headquarters too. So you have to let their creativity happen. You get a campaign with a lot of energy and a lot of things, not just will.i.am's a good example, but there are hundreds of thousands of kids out there who've made videos about why they're for Obama, spread that to their friends, and you don't have that, as much of that with Clinton. The Edwards campaign, we did a lot of. I mean, some of it was really, it never got much attention because the whole world was focused on Obama and Clinton. But we did things like, I'll tell you one of the most moving things that I saw happen was that people had asked Edwards. John had said something about poverty. I think he'd been down in New Orleans, and people said, "Well, if you keep talking about poverty, but what have you actually done to end poverty? To try you yourself?" And so he went out and he, like he had been doing, but he did it purposely. Did something, working on a house in New Orleans or something. Put that together, and then he looked out there and said, you asked me on YouTube, what was I going to do? I worked on this, and so tag you're it. What are you going to do? And that sort of started, not a lot, but a few people out there started doing stuff, putting it up on the net, and then saying tag you're it. And so you had this sort of tag you're it game running around. No one really, like I said, it didn't get a lot of attention, but just things like that. I mean, that were just really trying to engage people, and the same thing with him. You knew it was him when he did that. I mean, it wasn't some kind of cooked thing. And I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't even know who came up with tag that thing. It wasn't the biggest thing we did. It was just touching to see people respond to it in a human way and actually do something, and then come back and do tag it, and then there'd be some other kid doing something. It was really cool to see it happen. But you see, that's what I'm saying. I can't imagine that happening in the Clinton campaign. I mean, I'm not putting it. First of all, I don't put anybody down for this. I'm a top-down guy. Everybody who's involved in politics today grew up and learned top-down. That this is the message today. That's what the communications department is doing. That's what we're telling people to say. And by the way, the Republicans are great at it. I mean, they're brilliant at it. Carl Rover, somebody writes the talking points at everybody on cable today, and the Republican Party will be saying the same damn thing. And I don't mean just on TV. I'm talking about all the way through the campaign and the way it's run. But what that and television did was took the American people out of the process. It's just two talking points yelling at each other all day long. And the people are either spectators or just turning off. And I think what's happened in 2003, 2004, and 2008 is you're seeing a medium and top-down practitioners. I mean, David Axelrod, Joe Trippi. I mean, the people that I think have been trying to let this go are still top-down people trying to let the bottom have its shot. I mean, I'd been trained to hold on to the wheel with everything you got, and I'd let go a little bit, but I'd want to grab it. I mean, I still had the instinct that's inside there. So the Clinton people, look, they won. They're the best top-down campaign in history in 92 and 96. They learned, and they were better at it than anybody. I mean, that's what's so amazing to me about what people do not realize is this is not John Edwards of 2004 or John Kerry of 2004 or Dick Gephardt that these guys that the Obama campaign beat. The Obama campaign beat the strongest, the best, the greatest top-down campaign in history. And for 40 years, that's all, since television took hold of the country in 1960, so it's now 47 years, 48 years. For 48 years, there's been nothing but broadcast media, top-down, command and control campaigns. And the greatest one of all time, the one that raised more top-down dollars, $2,300 a pop, than anybody in history in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton's campaign. I mean, you cannot argue. By every measure, they are the greatest top-down campaign in history. And they lost, or are going to lose, to only the second bottom-up campaign, internet, new media-driven campaign in history. That is an amazing thing that's going on right now. I tell people, and I'll shut up and get another, but I tell people that, I don't know yet whether putting it in, I don't know yet whether the Obama campaign is the Apollo 11 of a new kind of politics, where we actually take them, get a man up there safely and bring him back and land him. We've got, there's, but I also don't characterize Howard Dean in our campaign as, Apollo 3 or anything, one that went up and, but I think we were the Wright brothers. That's all we were. I mean, we were up there with some flimsy sticks and some string and a piece of wood for a propeller, and proved you could get off a sand dune, and that there was a new kind of politics that you could actually fly. And these guys have skipped Boeing, skipped Mercury, skipped Gemini, skipped Apollo, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I think that they're either 10 or 11. And that's what we're waiting to see. I mean, I really believe that.
That's a fantastic way to end the intro. Simon, do you want to come up here and take some more questions for everybody? That's a fantastic analogy. Love it.
Open up. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have Ben. Do we have mics? Is that how? Just raise your hand, and we'll take questions from the audience. And please identify yourself for the permanence of YouTube here. Tracy, we have mics.
Yep. Hi, my name is Nikki Enfield. I was actually an organizer in Iowa in Woodbury County. For Dean, I was one of the first ones hired on June 1st of 2003. I remember the whole, learning the tools, and I remember, the July meetup. It was 10,000 people across the country. Whoopee! Right. And then, the next month it was 100,000 people, and then there was 10,000 people in each city, and it was crazy. My question is, I try really hard not to be a little bitter at the fact that I feel like the Dean campaign, we really sort of dug this foundation with our bare hands, and really, the brilliance of it, and I think you just hit on it, the difference between the top down and the bottom up. The Obama campaign, to its credit, I think still had a top up conversation and said, we're going to do it from the bottom. I mean, that was still a top level decision. The brilliance of the Dean campaign was, I don't think that conversation was ever had. It just sort of happened, and we let it happen. But I don't know. As the person that really sort of let it happen, I guess I just would be interested to hear. I don't know. I just get a little sort of annoyed that we don't get more credit.
Well,
to be perfectly frank.
I'm not bitter at all about that. No. No. Look, the thing is, there is a difference. And I'll tell you one thing that the Dean campaign, we created a 24-hour, 7 days a week, broadband, site, deantv.com, where anybody could come, place their own video up, and everybody else could come and rate it and tell other people to go see it. Okay? Now, no one made a dollar. Okay? They did it, the kids that built that did it because they believed in changing the country and they were against the war and they were for Howard Dean. Okay? There was no YouTube. We made YouTube. There was a Dean YouTube before YouTube made YouTube. Okay? Dean Space, Dean Link. You know, there were other things out there. I'm not saying, but MySpace and the social network sites that were out there, you know, we're nowhere near the millions of people that they're out there today. We were doing Dean Space, Dean Link about the same time they were getting off the ground. You look around at the tool set. Now what's happened 4 years later is really simple. That it wasn't just that we let it go and we let it, you know, be free, the bottom. No, we were actually creating the tools. I mean, we actually created Dean TV. And I remember going to Nico, our webmaster, and explaining what I wanted, and he just said, like, well, that's pretty cool. And then they went and built the damn thing, and we actually did it. And we were scared to death about the broadband costs. I mean, you know, because we were running also a couple 100,000 people were, you know, were looking at video or uploading video. It was a really big success, but we didn't have YouTube. So what's happened is essentially a bunch of entrepreneurs with VC capital have gone out since then, or right around then, and we're launching magnificent new, rockets and fuel tanks and stuff. I mean, if you put it in the Apollo thing, YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, and by the time you come in 2008, there are millions and millions of people on these social networks that we didn't have. We had 1.4 million blogs. Today there's 77 million blogs. It's not just that there's a, let me put it this way. I absolutely guarantee you that in 2012 or 2016, somebody is going to make the Obama campaign look like chump change. Okay? And the reason isn't the new tools, it's the network. It's the network stupid. The network is getting bigger and bigger. The people that use broadband, the people that are on the net, the people that use YouTube, that have transacted on the net, it's just exponential. So if you look at it, McCain gets 40,000 people to sign on with him in 2000. It scares the living daylights out of me. I go, oh yeah, that guy David Haynes, that was an amazing thing. The Democrats, we got to learn how to do that so we can compete with them in 2004. The Republicans, for some reason, don't do a damn, well, George Bush with his Pioneers and Rangers. So we go from 40,000 to Dean 650,000 to, I don't know, 3 or 4 million, I'm sure, that are signed on with Obama. And it'll be a ton of people next time around. And the other thing I think is, I still believe this right now, I think Obama's going to have like like $500 million will get raised in the general election. Because look, you got 57 million Americans voted for Kerry. 57 million people voted for Kerry. 60 million voted for Bush. You're telling me that 5 million of the 57 million who voted for Kerry wouldn't have sent Kerry $100? Okay, that's all. We're talking. We're still at talking about very small numbers of people. Even when we get these huge numbers of dollars and people getting involved, they're ridiculously tiny still. And 5 million Americans are going to give Barack Obama $100. I absolutely believe that. And that's $500 million. Maybe I'll be off by 100 million, but it's 100 million here, 100 million there. But I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be an amazing thing, and it has a lot. Yes, it has a lot to do with. But I mean, it can't take off unless the people in the campaign understand that the American people out there, they want to do something. Give them the tools, and they'll help you. Instead of, no, we're the only people that are smart, and we know how this is all going to go down, which is essentially how the Clinton campaign started out. I'll tell you something. The last top-down campaign died, not now, it died in February.
Right.
It died in February when, for the first time, I was sitting there shocked, stunned, watching TV, and Hillary Clinton says, help me please, go to www.hillaryclinton.com. And I knew it was really her because of the www part. No one does that anymore, right? That's like, so, you know, someone in her campaign said you got to do it. But you know, my point is, that was it. That top-down campaign died. There will never be one. No one will ever make the mistake ever again that the Clintons made of running a top-down campaign. That'll never. Now, there'll be lots of campaigns like Obama do a very good job of playing the top, you know, getting as many $2,300 checks as they can, you know, or whatever, and then and doing a really good mix. Although I think, you know, I think that, you know, in the back of in my book, you know, I wanted to do it in 2004, but I wanted to do a $100 limit and challenge every campaign in the country to, I mean, every campaign for president to limit their donors to $100. And I think the American people would really respond. I mean, that would just like, let's just get rid of the influence on Capitol Hill. Undo. Everybody can make their case. You can make your case to Congressman, to Senate, but you can't. You know, I'm not going to take more than $100 for my campaign for president.
We're up here.
My name is Richard Bell, and I've been doing this online politics for a long time, starting with the DNC and CompuServe back in '93.
We did that one together.
Yes, we did. And the first DNC website in '95. And a lot of these ideas have been kicking around really since then. There was a group at MIT that did wonderful work during the first Clinton term of thinking out almost everything that's been done since. But the point that you're making, you cannot underestimate how conservative political consultants are. All right? And we've seen that played out on the presidential level.
Right.
But if you want to find an even more hidebound bunch of people, it's the Congress. And I would be interested in having you talk about how do you think, assuming that an Obama won, how will you use this stuff to govern with as opposed to get elected with? Because getting elected is not the problem.
Yeah.
We elected a bunch of these people in 2006 and they haven't done squat about ending the war. So what's going to be different in 2008, regardless of who's president?
I think what everybody should get ready for is that, look, you got to remember what happened the last time this all happened. And you know, we had radio was king, and there was finally a moment. Everybody was arguing about whether how much TV was going to change stuff and all that stuff. But basically, TV finally got to the place where there were enough in everybody's house, and for the first time, live broadcasts of the inaugural address was going to happen at a time when there were enough sets out there that everybody was going to see it. And this guy, John F. Kennedy, walked up to give his inaugural address, and it was a great speech. It's a speech that went down and, you know, has gone down in history, many elements of it. But part of that was the amazement of the American people seeing this thing live, and a guy with all that charisma and energy and his words moved the country. It totally changed the direction. I mean, just literally lifted the country up. And a lot of that had to do with, literally, it was the first time it was the TV president. It was the launching of television president. What we're about to witness is the first networked or interactive or whatever you want to call it presidency. Because what's going to happen this time is, as the President of the United States goes up there and in his inaugural address, or her inaugural address, if somehow she figures this out, but I don't think it's going to happen this time. His inaugural address, and says, here's my agenda for the first 100 days. This is what I want to do on health care. And at that moment, sites are going up, blogs are going. I mean, the entire, the network citizenry decides it's signing on to that healthcare thing, and it is going to help him. And the same thing on, these are the 3 things we're going to do, and we're going to do it. It's not going to be it'll be televised. But that's not, this is going to be the first network presidency in the history of the United States. Not the first, Kennedy was the first television president. He was right there, right at the moment when enough of the sets were out there. Same thing. Enough people are on broadband. Enough people are blogging. Enough people are on these sites. People will create it. And the president may end up having a whitehouse.gov that looks a hell of a lot like my Barack. Right? And now, and what I'm saying is, and now here's what the president's doing on health care. Here's what my agenda is this week. Here's what we're doing 4 weeks from now. This is the bill we're putting through. Sign up to help pass it, to talk to your congressman. Never shut the thing down. It just switches right over, and you have the first network presidency in the history of the United States, and that's how we go for a long time as the network gets bigger and bigger. That's what I think this will be it. Whether it, by the way, whether it's Obama, Hillary, or McCain, whoever that person is, when they walk up there, that's what's going to be going on. The blog, everything, all these new communications tools and the way they echo with the cable news and all that stuff is just going to be a totally different presidency. Much different than Bush's even. It's just now hitting the kind of maturity, I think, in terms of tools, assets, et cetera, that are needed to do it.
Right behind. Yeah, go.
Turn right guy.
Thanks. Sean Dakin with National Political Do Not Contact Registry. One thing that I've been noticing, I try to stop robocalls. That I'm noticing is that Pew just came out a couple of weeks ago saying that robocalls are now the #1 form of contact for congressional candidates. So the dichotomy I'm seeing is, this incredible kind of grassroots support for Obama at the top level, but at the congressional level, grassroots is kind of, I don't want to say disappearing, but is being taken over by kind of outsourced politics. And the big example is the automated robocall. So I wanted to kind of get your take on, this incredible kind of lowering of costs around robocalls and really the outsourcing of politics, not to volunteers, but to computers.
I'm not a big fan of robocalls. I'm not sure what we can do about them. Most people don't realize, one of the things that killed us in Iowa was that somebody who will never be able to prove who it was called every single Dean supporter 16 times on the same day, on the Saturday before the caucuses. Hi, Howard Dean campaign, want to make sure you're still with us. You are, great, thank you. Half an hour later, hello, Howard Dean campaign, just want to did that 16 times so that by about 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon, every single one of our supporters hated our guts because Ed had pulled their phone out of the wall, so that when we really did call them one time, like at 8 o'clock, saying, hey, they were screaming, yelling at us, calling us names. But, no reporter will report it because, well, you can give them 3 people who say they got all the calls, but they're your supporters. And what are they going to tell? They can't identify who it was, and you can't. So if I could figure out how to ban them, I would. But they're still devastating, and they were done to Obama. They were done to him all the time. I don't know if they'll probably be done to Clinton too. I'm just saying. So it's not just at congressional. It's sort of a plague on the politics. It's the one thing, and the reason is because that's why you can't trace it. It's not a traceable thing. It's not paper. I can show you. Here's the ugly piece of mail the Clinton campaign or the Obama campaign just TV. We can put it on CNN and you can see, look at this horrible thing or good thing. But the call, no one's really sitting there most of the time with a tape recorder on their phone so they can catch that nasty robocall. So that we can play. And even they did, it's like there's nothing visual to show you on TV. So it's like it's like putting gloves on to do the hit. And that's where most of the hits, no fingerprints. So I mean, it's very, it's actually, you touched on really one of the things that frustrates me most about what's wrong with politics today is that instrument.
You got two here. Go ahead.
I'm curious, we talk about top-down and bottom-up politics for campaigns, but what about the Democratic leadership? How will it change?
It's changing. I mean, look, John Tester wasn't some committee's guy in D.C. They wanted Morrison, the state auditor. They'd pretty much handpicked Morrison as the Senate candidate in 2006. But it was a bunch, Jerome and a bunch of other, Jerome Armstrong and some other people went out and interviewed this guy named John Tester, fell in love with him, started talking about him all over the blogs, and started generating small donations to him, got him a little bit of notoriety, and his campaign took off. He defeated Morrison in the primary and is now the U.S. Senator from Montana. And that happened, I don't know, like 15 times or so on the House side. I mean, John Hall, a race I did in New York 19, I don't remember who our Democratic primary opponent was, but they were the DCCC's candidate. They didn't think John Hall, I thought he was too liberal or something. I mean, I don't know what they thought, but they didn't go with him. He beat Sue Kelly. I mean, and now I'm just citing a couple of cases, but Tester would be a well-known one. So it's not, the committees aren't, don't have the kind of total control. Look, they're still, they can still really move a candidacy, and they do, and God bless them. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that you're starting to see the shift where, and I think the DCCC and the DSCC this time, they learned their lesson in 2006. I think they do have their ear to the ground, listening to what some of the bloggers are saying about this candidate versus that candidate, and being a little bit, they're actually listening and going and listening to the bottom, and are starting to realize, maybe the bloggers in Montana know something we don't know. Maybe they are a little smarter than us. We're just basing, it on a visit to D.C. and some cursory look at what we think the guy can raise and that kind of stuff. And the bloggers are vetting these guys better than we are, and we're generally more correct, I think, in 2006 than the committees were. I mean, about sort of who is going to win and who is the better candidate. So I think you're already seeing a shift in sort of the top down and how the two committees work. And like I said, they deserve a lot of credit this time for, I think, learning a lesson from 2006 and starting to have their ears close to the ground to people out there who are blogging and talking about the candidates.
Hello, Sinomara Velasquez with the Hispanic Institute. Back in February, I think you mentioned that you try reaching the Hillary campaign, or I don't know if you actually talked to them about the top-down.
Yeah.
What are they saying today? I mean, apart from hitting their head, what are they saying?
How much trouble do I want to get in?
We're videoing it. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, I don't know. About 2 years ago, I had a meeting with the campaign manager and a couple other people, and I said, do this, run as a change candidate, forget about your experiences, run as a candidate of change. Say out loud that you believe there are 5 million women in America who will give $100 to change the country for the better and to change our politics, and mean it, and that women, every woman within the sound of your voice knows that we're not the status quo, we are change, that we have a different perspective on why it's important to educate our kids in war, not just this war, but all war, on why we need to start taking better care of what we're doing to the environment, blah, blah, blah. And run as change, and definitely do 5 million women $100 and mean it, and call to arms. And they looked at me like has happened many times in my career, looked at me like I had a tinfoil hat on, and showed me, out the door. and proceeded to run this top-down thing. There were people in the campaign, Howard Wilson, Jay Carson, Chris Balderson, who I think genuinely didn't want to do that. I mean, were calling me up saying, how could we do this? So I'm not, and I know Peter's great, but they wouldn't do it. And I'm not saying all those were great ideas. I'm just trying to throw them out there. And they decided, and like I said, and I think they decided we know how to raise more $2,300 checks than anybody on the planet. We're going to build a different kind of network. It's going to be a $2,300 network, and you can't get into the network unless you can give $2,300. And if you can't do $2,300, you're in trouble, kind of thing. And did it that way, and I think ran their campaign that way. And I think two things. They got into a situation where he had more money than them because he can re-up, his people can re-up and give another $25. They're not maxed out. Almost all of her people are maxed out, and they can't go back to him anymore. So to the point where she's now loaning $11.4 million to her campaign just to stay alive. By the way, exactly what happened to John Kerry having to loan $6.4 million to his campaign when Dean ran him into the ground financially because we could reload. Now, we lost. I mean, I'm not, but that's one. Two, when you have a decentralized campaign with hundreds and thousands, millions of volunteers out there, you don't have to, you're going to be able to spontaneously, using the web, connect all those volunteers in a caucus state to organize a caucus alongside your professional organization, which the Obama campaign was able to do because the tools were there and they weren't there for us in the way they were. We were primitive, remember, flimsy wings in 2004. They have real steel beams and stuff, and they can do that. Because she never really developed that, was just not even there in the caucus states. So let me tell you right now, go back and look. Go back and look at his delegate lead. Guess where that lead comes from? That lead comes from him winning all those caucus states by those big margins where he ran up that 130, 140 delegate lead, was all in the caucus states that she couldn't compete in for two reasons. She didn't have the money to compete in them, and she didn't have the ability through the web to use the numbers of decentralized volunteers that he had, alongside the Twos and the Hildebrands and the brilliant sort of field strategists that they had that actually could plug in. And you take those two things alone, actually just take the caucus thing by itself. She's the nominee if she had just contested those caucus states. She's the nominee. It's the entire reason she is not. Whoever made the decision to not contest the caucus states, get the gun, because that's who should be shot. Right now, I'm just telling you, I don't know who the hell it was, but take a gun out because that's who should be shot. And now it probably won't work again in this town, but that's like...
Joe, we've already passed that point. Here,
Yeah,
one more. We're back here.
Sorry.
She got her arm.
I know I only get in the minute.
And I'm going
sorry.
to ask you the last question. How long?
I talk too much.
We got 10 minutes.
Hi. I'm wondering if you could tell us about what I think was a manufactured scream by Dean and the role of the media in that compared to some of the things that are grabbing headlines with Barack Obama. Because I see a comparison there, just a little bit, in derailing a campaign.
Well, you can't, let me just go through. You can't, it's like a car wreck, right? You can't give them video that is that good, right? I mean, it's like when they show you, when they show you the car light going boom, 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 boom down, and they just keep every hour on CNN they're showing you the car, how did Darrell Waltrip or whoever survive this one, right? And it's the same thing. There was a moment where the video was just too damn good. And I say to people, I've said this before, I'll say it again, look, you can have the best campaign ever. You can have the best candidate ever. You can be the best campaign manager ever, right? All it takes, everybody in this room needs to understand, all it takes is a 6-second sound bite that will last forever. And that's it. It's all it takes to take you down. That's why this is the most unforgiving process ever devised. You know, like, even what we're doing today with Hillary, look, you run for the U.S. Senate, you lose. You win. It's over. You don't have to sit there and decide, are you in or out, okay? There's a day. For every other process in our politics, there is a day where you are dead. You know, this is one where, no, you could lose 30 states in a row and you could still say, no, I'm going to take the case on. I'm going to take it to the convention. And so, you know, there's a different day. You get your heart broken, you're gone if you run for the Senate. In the presidency, that grueling thing could go on for 2 or 3 years. And if you've got the fortitude to keep on going, and the following and the money, et cetera, you keep on going. No one, I have never seen anybody get out of this thing just because they lost a bunch of states in a row. I mean, had Walter Mondale done that, he wouldn't have been the nominee. We lost something like 18 states or something in a row. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he had the fortitude to fight back from that. I mean, it was a courageous, amazing thing. And to watch that battle that we had in '84 on both sides. So, and by the way, I'd point out that in that scenario, we wouldn't have won had we been in today's world, because poor Gary Hart in '84 was getting, it was what happened. He sort of scores his rocket, starts taking off, and there's this thing called mail with the checks. So people got up the next morning and wrote checks to him and put it in mail, which back then took like 5 days to get from wherever to Denver. And then in Denver, the bank held the checks for 7 days because they were out-of-state checks. So you got to, like, there's a whole kinds of stuff that's changed here. So you get, like, literally you're a rocket ship, except the fuel is taking 11, 12, 13, 14 days to get in. Unlike today, where Hillary's case in Pennsylvania wins, the next day $10 million is in her account and rolling. So just all of this stuff, it's not just Joe Trippi and the Wright brothers and Obama and Joe Rossbar. I mean, all that, yes. But this is a lot of stuff, YouTube, a lot of tools out there, a lot of sites that are, you know, that are keeping people informed, whether it's Tech President or you know, or just Technorati. I mean, just different ways for people to follow what's going on and to get engaged. And they're all pointing now, and that wasn't happening in 2004. I mean, in 2004 we had maybe, you know, a bunch of blogs, that, you know, some, but not even the numbers we have today.
So I'm going to ask the last question, and then we'll break. Is that,
Oh man, I've caused so much trouble for myself.
No.
Yeah. Please don't tell anybody what I said.
We'll ask the journalists not to write, Joe.
It's on video.
None of you are blogging. None of you are blogging.
Okay,
right?
there's like 8 people
The guy's
blogging
twittering
over
over here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
live blogging and twittering here.
It's all. There is no more off the record. There's no more off the record.
I'm
Right?
joking. I'm
Yeah.
joking.
So 2 things, Joe. One is that, you know, after I got to know Joe, we had a talk about the Jerry Brown race in 1992.
Yes.
Where, you know, in the Clinton campaign in Little Rock in '92, we tried this experiment inspired, I don't know if we've actually ever talked about this, but we tried this experiment inspired by the Brown campaign in '92, where the Brown campaign used that radical new tool called an 800 number, which was this was all pre-internet in 1992. And the Clinton campaign was very uncomfortable with us using the 800 number because that was something Jerry Brown did, right? And it was not, and it was unprofessional, unpresidential.
Another trippy.
Another trippy thing. And I learned later that this was trippy, right? But one of the things, Joe, just to show how ready people were already for all this, we created this 800 number called 1-800-4-BILL, F-O-R-B-I-L-L. And we used it at a single event in, I forget where it was, where they allowed me to put the banner behind Clinton's head. And the next morning on CBS, there were an 8-second clip of Clinton talking, not ever mentioning the 800 number, but you could see it in the background. And we got 40,000 phone calls, right? From twice run 8-second clip, who saw it on TV in that 8 seconds and then dialed the phone inbound into the campaign. Right. And I said I was in Little Rock, I'm like, you know, we've struck gold. And they're like, that's it, no more. The president, you know, the governor didn't like it, and he thought it was kind of cheesy, and they killed it. And so the point of this was the desire of the American people, I think, to engage and participate and be partners in the fight, preceded the internet. But I just want to end with this one thing I mentioned earlier in my talk, and I just want to get I want to get your thoughts on this. When you talk about the network effect, right? 3 billion people of the 6 billion people in the world have phones now, right? Most of the people who connect to this global communications network are connecting through phones. We're already seeing in many civil societies, as I said earlier, in Egypt and in China and in other places around the world. You even saw with the Saddam Hussein hanging video. I mean, that bootlegged video had huge impact throughout the Middle East, right? Think about this globally for a minute as a way to close. I mean, what do you think this is going to do to global politics, not just here in the U.S.? Is it going to further bring people out of isolation? Is it going to help more transparency, more democracy? I mean, what's your sense about all this?
No, I think it's going to be big help. I mean, you look at Kiva, the site where you can now loan somebody in Kenya $1 or $5 to help them start their business, and they actually are paying it back and with interest, a little bit of interest, and which lets you keep doing it to other people. I've done a lot of some work in Nigeria, where, just to get to your point about phones, where they have 1.6 million landlines in the country, but they have 66 million cell phones. I mean, like the poorest village somebody in the village has a cell phone that everybody else uses. And we were texting to them, you hold the torch of democracy in your hands, don't drop it, don't let it get extinguished, send this on to your friend, make sure that in your village, make sure that you participate, because we have to keep democracy in Nigeria. It spread all over the place there. And to the point where the government had not thought that, the government had a problem. How do you communicate with your citizens about malaria or AIDS or any of these things, and has had an impossible job doing it. And it was us sort of messing around. I mean, not messing around, it was an important election, but to which all of a sudden they realized, wow, maybe we could use this tool to text our citizens about malaria, about AIDS, that kind of thing. So you're starting to see the tools start to move, and I believe the cell phone's going to be, I mean, Twitter.com, as an, I don't know how many of you Twitter or not, but you should go check out Twitter.com. I'm on it. There's a bunch of people that use it that you should follow or get used to, see what you think about it. But I think these tools are, we're still, like I said earlier, we're still at the infant stage of this thing. We're about to see the first network president. We saw what the first television president, not just did here, but abroad, did everywhere in the world. And I think the same kind of thing. I mean, I think, imagine Barack Obama as an example, and picture, what they're going to be sending around in cell phones in a lot of places, Nigeria and a whole lot of places, of this guy standing there taking the oath of office. I mean, it'll be, I think, a much different, and we're also talking about much more personal medium than even television. I mean, you're interacting with the device or with what's going on right there, and you use it. So I think this is all, but that's, by the way, I think one of the real tragedies of what you talked about with Clinton. The 92 thing, which was where I had this thing about, I've always thought television sucked because it wasn't interactive. How do we make it interactive? So we experimented with the 800 number. But I absolutely believe that that Bill Clinton could change the world if he understood the bottom up, his power and sort of bottom up tech reach. I really have always believed that. I just can't figure out how to make those two things happen, since there doesn't seem to be. It's like you said, it's corny, or I don't know. It's not. It's just something Again, I really think they're victims of amazing success, and it worked for them. And I also think, like I said, that you can't fault anybody in the industry or in the business for being a top-down person. Every single one of us was trained that way. My real thrill is going to be, I think, 2, 4, 6 years from now, when a lot of the kids in the Dean campaign and Clark campaigns, the campaigns of 2004 and the Obama campaigns, will be running congressional races all over the country. I mean, in other words, that's when the top-down practitioners are giving way. Yeah, no, but will give away to a generation of people who really have experienced their first political races from the bottom up. And I think that's when you really see it turn into rocket fuel too. But I also think that that's what I'm saying. I think there are a lot of people who struggled with top-down politics with Kennedy, with Mondi. I mean, who loved it and tried to do their best with it, but always felt it sort of hampering. That are trying to break out of what they've been trained to do for 30 years, and even I, who know better, screw up and and all of a sudden find myself doing top-down things like wanting endorsements. No, I do it. It's like, gosh, it'd be great if we could get that governor's endorsement. What am I thinking? But I do. I mean, it's just so ingrained here that I can't get it out, and I know better. So, I just think that's. But I do think you're going to see. I think you're seeing it with Gore. I mean, you start to think that whether he totally gets it or not, the bottom is finding him. It's going to happen. So yeah, I really do.
Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And